Hi, my name is Stefan, and today I am going to report my Phalaenopsis Pulchra. Now, this Phalaenopsis, I've had it for over 10 years. I brought it as a small keiki. I remember when I got it, when I moved to the UK, I brought a plant that was about maybe the size of this, or maybe the size of this. Yeah, I think about 2 leaves, and it's grown to be very big ever since, and it's flowering quite often, and I love this plant. It's been a very good grower. It gave me very few problems over the years. One problem that you'll notice is that it grows very in a very messy way. It makes a lot of keikis, and what I've done over the years is that every time that I would get a keiki like this, for example, I would take it when it was much smaller, so say maybe when it was this size. I would take it and turn it around the pot and place it somewhere else in the pot. Now, at the time, that was possible because the plant wasn't this big, but at the moment, the plant is so big that this pot is even, this pot is probably a little bit oversized, possibly, and there is not more space in here, as you can see. I mean, maybe I could put a plant here, but really there is no more space. So what I decided to do is, now that I have a greenhouse with a very reliable high humidity, I am going to try, because I'm say try because it's a very big plant, so I think it will work out. I'm gonna try and place it in this piece of cork. Now, I looked a little bit into what type of mount I would be best doing. Cork is a very traditional way of doing it. Cork degrades very slowly. It is very light. It is quite natural for a plant to grip over cork. It's very renewable, actually. So this is stripped from a plant, I think oak amongst others, and it then grows back. So it's a very renewable source of mounts for orchids, and I think it looks quite natural. So this is obviously a piece that came from a small branch, and I think it'll look quite good with the relatively small plantlets of the Phalaenopsis Pulchra. So what I'm gonna try to do now is to remove this pulchra from the pot where it has been for not even that long, to be honest. But at the moment it is not flowering, so I thought it was a good time to do this. I'm going to remove it from the pot. I'm going to use some of this sphagnum that I've got here. I am currently soaking it in water so that it gets a little bit softer. I just got it out of the bag where I bought it from, and usually it's so dry that it takes quite a bit to get soaked and soft. If you do this job when the sphagnum is dry, you will break a little bit too much of it and it won't work as well. I've also got some scissors, because whenever you do this job, you will find some parts that are inevitably dyed and you need to cut them. If you're smart, you will sterilize the scissors, but I'm not a smart person. I'm rather don't have the patience, to be honest with you. Some tweezers also, always very useful when you're doing this sort of job. And then I don't think I'm gonna need it, but this knife could be useful if I decided to cut the bark. This bark, at some point I was thinking about dividing it into two lengthwise to make two halves. I think it will look okay, but I just quite like the fact that you'll be able to see it from all the sides, and I think that this plant is big enough to warrant that. So let me try and get this plant out of here, and let's see what I can do. Oh, I forgot to mention, this is fishing line. I'm not sure if you'll be able to make out the filament from it, but this is rated for 9 kilograms. And I think it doesn't terribly matter. It's incredibly resistant, and I use it for all sorts of purposes for orchids. So I'm gonna probably use this to wrap the plant on the mount, and I may decide to use rubber bands instead at some point. I'll see how it works, because this is obviously incredibly resistant, and you can trust this to hold for an incredibly long period of time, and is also very transparent, so it's really hard to notice at all, so it looks very natural. But I am sometimes worried that this may dig into the roots a little bit too much, so I'll see how I feel about it. And if it doesn't dig into the roots and damage them, this is probably the best material, because it will last forever, it can hold whatever weight, it's very inexpensive, you can find it very easily. So let's see what this plant looks like inside. So you may see that the plant has been, I must have watered this relatively recently, because the roots are a little bit green, and it feels like in the pot there is a lot of pressure. So I will just carefully squeeze it a little bit from side to side everywhere to try and undo the roots from being stuck to the pot. So you may be able to see here that this, I'm not sure how much you can make out of this, but there is a root here that is stuck to the pot. If you very carefully lift it, you see that it safely was just removed from the pot. It was stuck in there, but it was quite easy to remove as long as you cannot do it deliberately. So just by squeezing it side to side, this makes it easy to release a lot of the pressure and release some of these roots that have found their way. See here, there is another one that is growing just on the side of the pot here. And if I do it carefully, you can see how it is already coming out. These are very big roots, so I'm always very careful with these roots. I see some people, when they deal with repotting, they seem to be very liberal in breaking roots. Well, in fact, I actually broken this root a little bit. If you damage the velamen outside of the root a little bit, it shouldn't be the end of the world. The root should be able to recover. As long as you don't completely snap it, it's fine. Okay. So I'm just gonna look around to see if there is any other root that is stuck like that. I don't think that there is. So what I usually do after that is that I try to push it from the bottom, from the center of the pot, and see what happens. Okay, I can feel that there are definitely some roots stuck to the plastic, but I think that most of them have come free right now. So then you can carefully get it upside down, and then I'm just avoiding making a mess on the table, so I'm slowly releasing this pot. There you have it. The medium on this plant is not too degraded, because I repotted this quite recently. It may have been last year. And this was repotted in bark, carbon, horticultural grade carbon, sphagnum. Some of this sphagnum has actually grown into a plant, interestingly. And there is definitely some other type of moss that I can see here. What I need to do now, which is the part that is going to be a little bit tricky, is to undo as much of this as I can, and then also move each single plant a little bit, space a little bit away from the rest, so that I can deal with each of them separately. And the part that is always difficult here is to deal with this sort of situation, where you can see here there are some roots here that are stuck to single individual pieces of cork. And if you were to pull too hard, you could easily pull the not cork, bark. If you were to do this too deliberately, you may get the roots free of the bark, but you may bend the root too much and break it. So by doing this kind of slowly and carefully, it kind of helps to put some music in the background and just relax and do this and take this as a little bit of maintenance session. So just do this slowly and carefully. Okay, you can see here what happens if you remove a piece of bark too quickly and without paying enough care. It will just snap the roots that were stuck to it, because those roots, when they grow in next to it, they will get stuck to it very hard. And here you can also see the difference between a root that was on the outside, which is quite green looking, with a root that was growing on the inside that is white, because on the inside it wasn't receiving any light, and so it didn't develop any material to do photosynthesis, and that's why they remain white. If you lose a little bit of roots here and there, if they just get snapped, it's not the end of the world, but I obviously quite care about this plant, and I want to carry as many roots as I can. I don't want to damage it and set it back in its growth. You see, one of the reasons to have the scissors with me is to take care of this sort of issues. Whenever you see something like this, a root that doesn't look greenish, whitish, silverish, you can see that this one is connected with the rest with this very thin filament here, which means that it's definitely dead. But if you want any proof, you can just squeeze it, and you can see that this one, because it's not rotting, thankfully, it just feels incredibly empty. It's just completely empty. So if I squeeze here, I can feel that it feels quite hard, and so I would guess that it's just dead up to here, so I can get rid of that and continue. It's important to get rid of dead material of the dead roots, because you don't want dead material in your pot. If you don't remove the dead roots, they will be in your pot, obviously, and in there, as you water, they're gonna start rotting. Now, those are just dead roots; they're not actually part of the plant anymore, so your plant is not rotting. But having a large piece of material in your pot that is rotting could then sort of overtake the pot and then also transmit back to your plant. So you don't want that. You want the. You can see here there is another root that feels very empty here, and then back hard here. So I'm just gonna cut it in between those two. So if you were to put that rotten root in the pot, it will also then decompose into much smaller parts, and those smaller parts are basically going to clog up all the pot. And a big deal with growing orchids is the fact that they need, at least these epiphytic orchids, they need a lot of air in the roots, because that's what are the circumstances that they would get in nature. And so you need to make sure that you provide them with circumstances that are similar to that, because that's the only way that they know how to grow. Whenever there is a root stuck to another root, it is usually pretty easy to pull them apart. You just need to be careful, but usually the bond between the two is not as strong as it is between the root and the bark. In this case, I can see that this root feels hard here, and then soft, and it looks dark brown here, and then again it feels hard here. I would guess that this part is just going to die, and it's not a big deal to cut a little bit of roots from an established plant like this one, so I'm just gonna be extra cautious and just cut a little bit more. So I'm starting to think that instead of undoing every single root in here, which I'm gonna give you a little bit of a look, a little bit of a better look what is inside here. So this is a mess, and I could spend another few hours unpicking every single root from each other, or I could see if maybe I could place it on this piece of cork and hope that it looks natural. So that's what I'm trying to see now. If I place this correctly in the middle here, does it look like with a little bit of a fishing line I'll be able to tame it? Looks like that may be a good option, you know. So this is roughly what it would look like. Some keikis would be growing in the air, and that's perfectly fine. I actually kind of like that. So this would be quite close to the bark, and that would be perfectly fine. You can see here there is a big chunk of roots on this side, but again, that's fine. It looks about right to me. And so what I'm thinking of doing now is to tidy up a few bits that I can see, and then start to put a little bit of sphagnum moss in between, just to keep it a little bit more moist than what it would be otherwise. I don't need to use all this, I'll just kind of use a little bit of it. And then tidy a little bit with the fishing line, maybe a little bit more, until I can make sure that the whole plant is secure on here. It weighs quite a lot now. The cork itself is quite light, and so now it weighs quite a lot. I will then see if I can make maybe a hole on either side so that I can hang it, and then it should look pretty good, I think. Okay, so these two pieces of rubber band are enough now to keep it together for a little while I tinker with it. I can see there are obviously several plants here, and I would like them all to be relatively close to the cork so that it'll look a little bit neater. I won't be able to make every single one of it perfectly close to it, but I'll see what I can do. In the meantime, I'm gonna make a little bit of space. And I will put some sphagnum moss inside here. It's kind of hard to tell how much to put, but I think just any amount that you can put kind of in between. You don't want to put too much on one side or the other, because the risk is that those particular roots in contact with it are gonna stay wet permanently, which you don't really want. You want some dry, wet cycle whenever possible. So just put little chunks here and there. I'm pretty happy with this, and I think that I will just start going around with the fishing line to make sure that this cannot move anymore. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to do a double knot on one side here, tie it up a little bit. Fishing line is also very good at keeping knots, and it's also very easy to undo them if you just don't like them anymore. So that is another great quality. I will go around the mount with this now to make sure that this plant is gonna stay in place. And this is a bit tricky because, as you can see, this plant is messy and it has a lot of roots everywhere, but I'll try my best. So what I'm doing here is I'm trying to get in between the plants so that I am securing these plants from their base. And I'm gonna go over the roots And the stalks, there are still the stalks that was connecting the keikis. So this whole plant is a single plant connected by all these old stalks. So those are pretty hard, and I'll just need to make sure that I go over them and secure those as well. Then I just join back where I started, and I'm gonna do another double knot. Pretty easy, nothing fancy. It is sometimes better to just proceed little by little because, as I mentioned, you do not want to harm the roots. And you can see, for example, that here the fishing line is going over the roots, and if you were to just tighten it too much immediately, it could damage those roots. So it's better to proceed little by little and proceed with caution. I think that this fishing line has been very useful to wrap it all around it and keep it stable all around the mount. What I need to do now is to fashion a little bit more rubber bands around it so that those are gonna keep it very close to the mount without damaging the roots. Quite like that this plant is free, but I also think that it's gonna become a little bit annoying in the long run. Maybe I'm gonna regret it, but it does look quite natural and I quite like it, so I'm gonna keep it like this for now. I'm just gonna put maybe another few rubber bands around it. The rubber bands look a little bit ugly, but in the long run I will be able to remove them, so I'm not terribly worried about it. It's not gonna take too many months for this plant to attach to this mount. Okay, I think that's done it. So now it is just a matter of deciding whether I want it to hang this way or this way. Let me show it to you a little bit more close up. It's a little bit messy, but I think it'll improve a lot with time. And what I just need to do now is to punch a little hole with any instrument, really. It could be even the scissors. Punch a little hole here, making sure not to break the cork. So maybe actually I will use a drill. And I will then maybe use the same fishing line in there so that I can then mount it on a stainless steel S hook that I've got in the greenhouse, or you could use pretty much anything else that will just allow you to hang it. Very strong galvanized steel cable is also useful, anything like that. So now I just need to decide which way around it should go. I think it's pretty much the same thing. Yes, I hope that you have enjoyed this. It's been a bit of a long one. This is going to be incredibly pretty, I think, when this plant will eventually flower, which happens about once or twice a year for me. This plant had some issues recently because I reported into some hydroponic at some point, which she clearly did not like. So for now, I will just put it in the greenhouse and spray every day. And I think that I will come back flowering soon. Yes, flowered recently, but it was only maybe about 2 flowers, which is a lot less than what I would expect from this specimen. So thank you for watching, and let me know if you have any questions about this.